So this was a kit I showed to you in a previous video, and I will have a link for you so that you can head back and watch the whole thing if you want to. So today I'm going to show you what I did with this kit, how many projects I came up with, and what I did with all the leftover bits. So here is what I have left of this kit, and I like to keep notes on the back of how many layouts I got out of this kit. Now I know some of these are not full layouts because if you remember back in the beginning I talked about how I wasn't sure about these markers, and I did end up using them on a few things, but I didn't necessarily use them entirely with this kit. So I'll go through each layout and then talk about which pieces I did and did not use. And so this 8 layout isn't entirely 8 full layouts out of this kit. So this is what I have left. I have a whole bunch of sequins left, and I'll just add those to my stash because those are totally usable. I've got some cut aparts from a sheet of paper left over. I've got some of these crystals left over. I'm not a big pink user, so I think those will be tricky for me to use. And I thought I would like these, and I haven't quite liked them as much as I thought, so that's okay. I'll put those in my stash and see how I can get those used up in the future. And then I have another wood veneer left, and I totally like this. I just didn't have a theme that it would work for, so that will go in my wood stash and it will get used. And then just a couple more pieces of cut aparts there. That's my list. I've got a few alphas left. I'm not sure how much more I could spell out of these, and this is always the challenge with thickers, is having all of these leftover bits or running out of things that you actually need. And then I've got little bits and bobs left over of pieces of paper. And what I tend to do with last remnants of kits is to make cards. And so these pieces I particularly saved when I was cutting this paper apart. I had in my mind already that I would potentially use the back sides of these for cards. So this one says, "Thanks a bunch," "Thank you," "Enjoy," "Just for you," "Party like a flamingo." I don't know, but I like flamingos, so I'll figure out some way to use that. And then "Thank you again" and "Celebrate." So these will totally get used for cards. And that is what I have left. So I will come back and show you the layouts that I made, and then after that I will show you the cards that I put together with the very last bits and pieces. We go through the layouts, you'll notice that I have photos covered up, and that's just for privacy reasons, so I didn't have to get every single person's permission for being on the film. Layout number 1 here is just a single sheet of paper, and that black stripe is the back side of this blue, and I used my electronic die cut machine to cut a circle to create a focal point for my photo, and I actually outlined that circle with those markers to help give it a little more texture. And then I used cut apart sheets, and I used this little wood veneer to cover up the saying on the cut apart sheet that I didn't like, and some hexagons cut out of that hexagon paper, and using the sparkle and the twine from the kit to finish up this page. For this next layout, I used largely that hexagon paper and cut it down to be a landing spot for my photo. And then another sheet of paper had some word strips on the back of it, so I cut those apart to add as little tag elements. And then I used that twine to add other elements to the layout. And here I used the marker to add into my title without having to use up extra thickers. For layout number 3, I used a lot of the Simple Stories products, and I actually made a little flap on the side here to cover my journaling using several of the cards from a sheet of paper that I cut apart and relayered together into this flap. And I used more of that twine in various spots on the layout and pops of yellow, also from, I think it was from the hexagon paper there. So this next page was created with a sheet of black cardstock that did not come in the kit, and the reason I did that is because I wanted to focus on the markers that did come in the kit, and I didn't really plan much out about this layout. I just pulled out the markers and decided to make some frames and went with it, and I'm not entirely happy with kind of the sizing and placement of my letters and such, but as an experiment it was fine. The next layout here is another full sheet of pattern paper used for the background, and then I let my leftover bits of paper help draw the design with this kind of arrow shape. And then I used my gold marker to add in kind of a cascading sparkle that went with the title of my layout, which is The Magic of Learning. And then for that title, I did add in some gold letter stickers that were not included in this kit. Next is a construction theme layout with this wood grain and some grid paper that I use to map my photos and to also write my journaling and cut them apart, and that fit the theme really well. I also used some leftover yellow hexagons to make these little tabs up here. They're no longer hexagons, they're now rectangles. These yellow letters did not come in the kit, neither did this stamp that I used to emboss, but next to my title I do have lots of wood veneers that did. And the last layout here is my final sheet of wood veneer paper. The backside of this was a bold floral print that I had hoped to try and use, but I use wood grain, so that's what I went with. And then using up some last little bits of paper, using punches to give them some shape, using last little hexagons, using the last little tag, finishing up with my twine. And again, I did throw in some more of those gold letter stickers that were not part of this actual kit. Finally, there's this layout, and the only thing from this layout is this die cut here that says Fresh Start, and it was embedded in a sheet of cardstock from an electronic die cutter, and it did not cut through very well. I had to use a craft knife and scissors, and it took me a really long time to get it cut out, and I was not happy about this piece at all, but I wanted to show you so you had that piece to go with also. Alright, so this is what I have left for my kit, and I kind of went over the details of that a little bit already, so I'll just say what I'm adding in here. I knew I wanted to use one tag per card, and that's kind of my goal to finish off this kit. And I knew I would want some kind of twine to go with each tag, so I just went and pulled out a neutral twine, and I'm going to use that on my tags. And then I also pulled out cardstock. I've got some pink, some navy, some kind of turquoise, and some white. And then I'll pick which color I think would go best with each tag to get this kit finished up. But I have a problem with this tag. This final letter is cut off from when I was using it, probably that side for another project. So I'm going to show you how to kind of hide that and make it look intentional. So what I've planned to do here is to build a 3D flower that's going to cover up part of that S. So I pull out some of my punches and some of these leftover cards that I had, and I actually like the back side of that paper. So I punched a bunch of flower shapes in 2 different sizes out of that paper. And now these tools are actual paper shaping tools, but they're just a kind of stylus, and there's a link below about where you can find something similar. And what you do is you have this foam mat and you just rub them with the ball point of the stylus, and you use a bigger ball point for a bigger flower. And here I'm switching to a smaller ball point for a smaller flower. And as you rub them, the flower naturally curls up on itself, so you get this dimension to the flowers. And then I just use glue dots to glue the layers together. And I try to offset the petals and keep some of that dimension as I layer them up, and just press down on the glue dot in the middle, and that'll keep some of the structure of the flower. And here it is as a final flower, and I just add a little touch with this gem in the middle. Here's that card all done. I used that dimensional flower to cover up my cut off S, and it's looking good. For this one, I used just the tag, added some strips, added some sequins, and used the marker to add some corner dimension. Here we've got those flamingos, and since it's a party, I decided to add a cascade of sequins down on the left-hand side and frame the whole thing with that gold marker for some pop. This one's just pretty simple. I've got the tag with some twine and a few of those leftover hexagon bits, and a couple of the heart stickers. Another simple one, just a strip of paper to ground my tag, and using up those pink hearts I might not otherwise use. For this Celebrate card, I decided to make it festive by framing it with my marker and splashing sequins on there. Just using a center design on this one with some of the leftover pieces. Here we go with a final card, and I wanted to add some twine to this card, and one of the tips I like to do when I'm wrapping an entire card layer with twine is to punch some notches on there so that when I get my twine tucked behind there, it can't slip and slide around on the card. And here's the final look. A few sequins and it's done. As you can see, I got 8 cards out of the leftover scraps from my kit. Now 7 of those were from the tags, and then I made an 8th card since I had the cardstock already cut and just used up some of those leftover alphabets. And I really enjoyed this process of using my scraps to finish up and make some cards.